on Britain on the 10th of June 1940. Mussolini envied Hitler's easy territorial conquests and hoped to grab Britain's African empire while the RAF was fully stretched defending the skies above England. Driven by his colonial ambitions in North Africa, Mussolini built up his forces in Libya, thereby posing a threat to Britain's supply routes through the Suez Canal. In December 1940, 250,000 Italian soldiers in North Africa faced fewer than 100,000 troops of the British Empire, commanded by General Wavell. His job was to see that the Italians didn't take Egypt, one of the most productive parts of the British Empire. The Italian advance in Egypt had progressed as far as Sidi Barrani, 475 kilometres northwest of Cairo, where they built a chain of fortified camps behind a wire fence.
Now, the wire was a wire fencing, barbed wire fencing, erected by Mussolini, not personally, but by his orders, of course, which was something like about 10 feet, 12 feet high. And it went the full length from the sea right down to Fort Capuzzo, way down to Maddalena, which was way down south, and stretched right across the desert.
The British attack began in earnest on the 9th of December 1940. Sam Bradshaw was with the 7th Armoured Division outside Nibewa, a fortified camp on the outskirts of Sidi Barrani.
When we made the first attack in December 1940 against the Italians, we attacked at about 3 o'clock in the morning. It was very, very cold, actually. And in a match that we had to cover an area from Mersa Matruh, which was our forward area, to their front line, which was their defended area, which was Saloum, which is about 65 miles. So we made as quiet as possible, approach and then attack them. But we made a frontal attack on the main position, but we then made a diversionary attack through their left flank to come behind the main defences, and we cut most of them off. The amazing thing was they only had a few tanks in the front line. Most of the tank force was way back. It was about 60 miles behind the front line. So they went in such a position to put up much of a fight. They built pictures of us like attacking in tanks doing 50, 60 miles an hour, which was completely overstatement. We couldn't do anything like that speed. But I can imagine from their point of view, suddenly to be raided from the desert, and a sort of 3 or 4 tanks came raiding out the desert with armoured cars, shooting up their supply line. They must have been quite worried about the way we behaved. To us it was normal warfare. For them it was really disturbing the peace, you know.
When the war started, first of all, they didn't seem to know it had happened. And so in the first few days, their troops on the frontier were very indignant when they were surrounded and hadn't been told that they were at war with us. And after that, they tended to sit in their defences and not venture into the desert round about.
By the 11th of December, the British had managed to take the Italian stronghold of Sidi Barrani, where 38,000 Italians surrendered to British and Commonwealth troops. The victors then moved west along the coast. On the 3rd of January 1941, in their first action of the war, Australian troops attacked the heavily defended North African port of Bardia. By the end of the day, they had captured another 30,000 Italian troops. With so many prisoners, there was much confusion. One Italian soldier found that he was a prisoner one minute and a captor the next.
That was the 3rd of January, 1941. When we was captured, I said, this tanks, they come over, and I said, we couldn't done nothing else, so we give it up. We left the arm there, and we went. And they took us on the side, which are about 1 mile away. All of a sudden, from the bottom of the hill, 2 Italian tanks come over on the top of the hill. The English troops, I don't know, Australian and the Canadian or whatever they were, they saw these 2 tanks, they dropped the arms, we picked the arms up and we take them prisoner. And we was going back to pick up our arms that we left. In the meantime, a lot of troops again, they come over and we was prisoners again. So in about a couple of hours, they took us prisoner, we took them prisoner, and they took us again, and that's it. That was the end of it.
Despite Carmina's moment of glory, by the end of the week, he and 8 Italian divisions had been taken. The rest of the Italian army was in full retreat towards its strongholds in Libya. But the British couldn't relax completely. The desert could prove as dangerous as any human enemy, especially at night. At sundown, Sam Bradshaw's company, the famous Desert Rats of the 7th Armoured Division, would circle the wagons to make a stronghold out of their tanks.
One of the things in the desert is the vastness of the desert, the complete darkness at night. It's limitless, the desert, and you may not believe it, but you can walk past a tank within about 15 yards and not see it. And the tank is a big object, as you can imagine. If it was dark and you wanted to use the toilet, you'd get your back to the tank, make so many paces out into the desert, go to the toilet, turn about face and make the same paces back. But it didn't always work successfully. If you miss the tank, you go off wandering. You could even miss your encampment, as big as it was. And you'd often hear people walking past at night shouting, hello tanky, they've been lost. And you'd call them in, you know.
Pitch darkness wasn't the only problem the Desert Rats had to contend with. The Allied troops were ill-equipped to deal with the freezing desert nights.
Generally all you had on was shorts, socks and boots. And if you're lucky, you had your beret. But you just got used to it. You just had to put up with it, really. But when you could, obviously you had a balaclava, which covered your ears and part of your face. And you could wear your overcoat. So the cold would last probably from about 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, till early hours of the morning. Then the sun started to come up very early, about 5:30, 6 o'clock, the sun was coming up, you see. So it was only a matter of a few hours.